Ready for something kind of spooky today? We're diving deep into magic, witchcraft, all that mystical stuff.
Sounds intriguing.
But here's the twist. We're looking at how it pops up in games and media you already love.
Oh, I see. Like how those ideas show up in pop culture.
Exactly. We're talking definitions, biblical takes, and even from your favorite games and shows.
I bet a lot of people don't realize how often they encounter these themes.
Seriously. You're battling a necromancer, but do you know what that word even means? Today, we decode all that.
That's a great point. It's easy to gloss over those details.
Right. So we pulled some terms you've probably seen in games, like sorcery, enchantments, rituals, the classics.
Those are good ones to start with. They're pretty common.
Totally. So sorcery, it's not just about, mind bullets, right?
No, it often involves trying to tap into external forces, like trying to bend the spiritual world to your will.
Okay, so already kind of creepy. Then there's enchantments, where you're messing with reality itself.
Exactly, and that idea pops up everywhere, even if it's just someone flipping through a spell book.
True. It makes you think about those scenes in movies where there's summoning things with candles and stuff.
Rituals are fascinating, though. I mean, they show how much humans crave order and meaning.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
These very specific actions, they make people feel connected to something bigger than themselves.
Even if that something is, not so great.
Exactly. It's not always a positive force they're tapping into.
And speaking of not so positive, we got to talk about curses. Those are everywhere in stories.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they make for good drama, but the idea of a curse, that malevolent energy directed at you, it's unsettling.
Yeah, for real. Okay, one last term before we go full on Bible study on this.
Yeah.
Necromancy.
Ooh. Yeah, that one's a doozy.
Even the word sounds creepy, right?
It does, and for good reason. It's about communicating with the dead, which is a big no-no in many cultures.
Yes.
This idea that you can talk to spirits, even control them, it usually ties back to wanting forbidden knowledge or power.
Okay, so we're already seeing a pattern here.
Definitely. There are deeper forces at play than we often realize.
So we've thrown out a bunch of cool, maybe kind of creepy terms, but where does the Bible land on all this magic stuff?
Yeah, the Bible's not exactly throwing a rave for sorcery and rituals.
Right. It's pretty clear this isn't just about avoiding, spooky stuff in real life, right? This is about how we deal with this stuff, even in our entertainment.
Totally. I mean, when Deuteronomy calls these practices abominations, it's putting them on par with some seriously messed up stuff.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So even pretending to cast spells in a game, that's got to mean something, right?
It makes you think, yeah, even if it's just pixels on a screen, are we messing with spiritual forces we don't fully get?
Because in a game, you're actively choosing those actions, even if it's through your character.
And that's where things get interesting. The Bible's pretty consistent. Don't mess with spiritual forces outside of God's will.
So it's not just about avoiding spooky rituals in a graveyard. It's about what's going on in our hearts and minds, even with entertainment.
Exactly. It's about recognizing what we might be inviting in, even if it seems harmless on the surface.
Okay, that makes sense. But here's the thing. How come magic has gotten this, PR makeover lately?
Oh, totally. It's gone from being taboo to, the cool kid on the block.
Right. It's in everything. You've got good witches on TV. Magic's a staple in kids' shows.
It's become so normal, people barely bat an eye when someone whips out a spell.
Which, is that a bad thing? I mean, it's just fantasy, right?
That's the question, isn't it? Does all this magic with zero spiritual context, does it make us numb to the real deal?
We forget that maybe there's more to it than meets the eye.
And that's a bigger problem for kids growing up with this stuff as their normal.
Because if magic is everywhere, and it's always presented as cool or good.
Exactly. It makes it way harder to tell the difference when something actually dangerous.
So we've got this double whammy, easy access to occult stuff in games and shows, but it's all dressed up to look harmless.
You got it. And that's why it's not enough to just say the Bible says no and call it a day.
True, because we're talking about some seriously popular stuff.
Yeah.
So how do we enjoy this stuff without, compromising our beliefs?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's a tightrope walk, for sure. We got to be smart, we got to be discerning, and we got to be willing to really think about what we're watching and playing.
So it's less about ditching everything fun and more about engaging with it, but with our eyes wide open.
Absolutely. We got to be able to enjoy things, but also be honest with ourselves about what we're consuming.
All right, so let's get into it. We all have those games or shows we love, even if they make us think twice now.
Oh, for sure. And sometimes the best conversations happen when we admit we enjoy something but still ask the tough questions.
Okay, so let's talk specifics. Let's look at some examples of how magic shows up in pop culture, just to see how common this really is.
Okay, but don't blame me when you start seeing these themes everywhere.
Challenge accepted. So video games, those are the most obvious, right? Like Skyrim, you've got spells, Daedric princes. That's hardcore magic.
No doubt about it. But what about something like The Witcher? It's got that whole gritty realism thing going on.
True, true. So magic's treated differently there.
It's definitely more nuanced, but still present. I mean, Witchers themselves are basically magic users, and you've got curses, monsters, and it all points to a world where the supernatural is just part of life.
Okay, so even if it's not as in-your-face as Skyrim, the themes are still there.
Exactly. And that's what's so sneaky about it. Sometimes it's the subtle stuff that really sticks with us because we don't even realize it's happening.
And then you've got games like Diablo, which is like biblical apocalypse central.
Right, yeah, no holding back there.
Yeah.
Necromancers, demons, pacts for power. It's all on the table.
And that's the thing. It normalizes it. Like, oh, another Tuesday, summoning a demon horde, no biggie.
Exactly. That's why being critical is key. We gotta recognize that this stuff isn't just harmless fun, even in a game.
All right, so games are definitely on the list. What about movies and TV? Are they off the hook?
Definitely not. If anything, movies and TV are even sneakier because they reach so many more people.
True, you don't have to choose to play a game, but a movie or a show, it's just on in the background sometimes.
And it's not always obvious. Sometimes it's just a quick shot of tarot cards or a whole plot about a magical object.
Well, let's name some names here. What's a big one that comes to mind?
You can't talk about magic in movies without mentioning Harry Potter. Love it or hate it, that series made witchcraft mainstream.
Okay, yeah, that's a big one. But what about something less obvious?
Think Doctor Strange. It's a Marvel movie, so you get caught up in the action.
Right, right.
But when you boil it down, it's a surgeon learning sorcery and hopping through dimensions.
Huh. And people are cool with that.
It's presented as this exciting, visually stunning thing. We kind of forget that it's literally dabbling with spiritual forces.
All right, so we've got big budget stuff. What about, like, rom-coms with witches? Practical magic comes to mind.
Oh, totally. It makes witchcraft seem cute, even aspirational.
And then you've got movies like The Craft, where it's like, hey, magic can go wrong, but then it still glamorizes it.
It's a weird balance, right? Like trying to be cautious, but also kind of alluring at the same time.
Exactly. And then there's the straight-up horror, Hereditary, The Witch. That stuff's messed up.
Oh, yeah, those movies don't mess around. But again, it's all about witchcraft, demons, the occult, and people eat it up.
The Conjuring movies, too, they scare the crap out of me, and they say it's all based on real stuff, which makes it worse.
I know. It's like they tap into this primal fear we have, but package it as entertainment.
And we get desensitized to it, like it's no big deal.
Exactly. And that's why we have to be so careful. Okay, so movies definitely guilty. What about TV shows? They have to be better, right?
Oh, please. TV's just as bad. Supernatural was on for, what, like 1,000 seasons? Angels, demons, witches.
Right.
They had it all.
Supernatural was basically a crash course in the occult.
And then you've got your Charmed and your American Horror Story all normalizing this stuff.
And these aren't obscure shows either. They're hugely popular, which tells you something about our culture right now.
It's like we're obsessed with this stuff.
In a way, I guess we are. And it starts young, too. Think about all the kids' shows with magic.
Oh, don't even get me started. You've got princesses learning spells, ponies with magical powers. It's everywhere.
Sophia the First, My Little Pony, The Owl House. It's like they can't imagine a kid's show without magic anymore.
And don't forget about those classics like The Fairly Odd Parents and Winx Club. Seriously, do they even make kids shows without magic anymore?
It's a valid question, and honestly, it's something parents should think about. I mean, even if it's presented as cute and harmless, it still gets kids used to these ideas.
It's like laying the groundwork for them to be more accepting of this stuff when they're older.
Exactly, and then it becomes harder for them to separate truth from fiction, to understand the real dangers.
So to bring this all back around, it's not just about turning off the TV or putting down the controller. This is about something bigger, isn't it?
It absolutely is. We're talking about spiritual warfare here. This is about the forces of darkness trying to trip us up, to pull us away from God.
So where does that leave us? I mean, we're surrounded by this stuff, and it's often packaged in a way that makes it seem totally harmless.
That's exactly what makes this so tricky, right? It's easy to brush it off like, oh, it's just a game or it's just a story, but we can't forget there's a whole other side to this.
Right, like we're not the only ones with a vested interest in this stuff.
Exactly. The forces that oppose God, the ones pushing darkness, they see this as their way in.
Okay, now that's kind of freaking to think about. So what are we supposed to do with all this? It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
But don't panic. Just knowing about this, that's the first step. Knowledge is power.
So we don't need to like throw out all our games and cancel streaming services, right?
No, not at all. It's not about living in a bubble. It's about being savvy consumers.
So engage with it, but do it thoughtfully.
100%. We're called to be in this world, but we don't have to let it, absorb us.
It's like anything else, right? The more we understand it, the better choices we can make.
Exactly. And when it comes to all this occult stuff, the good place to start is by being rooted in the Bible.
Makes sense. So we know what the Bible says about this, and that helps us see when a game or show is maybe going too far.
You got it. It's not about memorizing rules, but about knowing God's heart, his desire for us to be free and to know the truth.
Which brings us to prayer, right? Can't forget about prayer.
Huge one. Talk to God about this. Straight up ask him for wisdom and discernment, for his perspective on all this.
So not just, please protect me from evil, but also help me make good choices about what I watch and play.
Exactly. And remember, prayer goes both ways. Listen to what he's telling you, too.
Oh, that's a good point. Sometimes we're so busy talking, we forget to listen.
It happens. And hey, if God's telling you to ditch something, even if you love it, don't be afraid to do it.
That's tough. But I know you're right.
It can be a sacrifice, for sure. But remember, you're not alone in this. Talk to other Christians, have those tough conversations, support each other.
There's that community aspect again. We don't have to navigate this stuff alone.
Exactly. We need each other to encourage each other, to hold each other accountable, to point each other back to what's true.
Well, we covered a ton today, from defining weird magic words to, like, dissecting our favorite shows.
We really went there. But my hope is that people come away from this not scared, but empowered.
Exactly. Like, we've got this. So, any final words of wisdom before we sign off?
Remember, true power doesn't come from messing with the spirit world, whether it's rituals or spells or even trying to avoid it all. True power comes from surrendering to the one who made everything, who holds it all together, who's always there for us, guiding us towards the truth.
And on that note, we'll leave you with something to think about. Pick a game, a movie, a show, whatever you enjoy that has magic or supernatural stuff in it. How's it showing you those themes? Does it make you think differently about it after today? It's something to ponder. Until next time.